starting by saying that, we could just start.
Yeah, well, literally, what are you doing?
Well, I'm reading the AJ, and I would love to live in Centrepoint.
No, what did you just say when you picked up the AJ?
I said I should read this
Because
this week we're talking about money, and it's the money issue. Is the money issue?
bearing in mind we're now live.
Okay.
And
Do you know? I picked it up early in the week, thinking how relevant is that we're doing the money issue, and so are the AJ. And then I got a bit stuck on some of the other articles. There's this very kind of there's a very inspirational lady who does an opening article. Then it's the Hedwick Coal Drops, which is a pretty exciting and controversial project. And then it's Centrepoint, which is also amazing. They've stopped selling the apartments in Centrepoint. I mean, I would loved living there. They've stood down the two agents that were flogging the apartments because the London market is crazy. People are giving crazily low offers on apartments. So they've just stood down all the people selling the apartments. I'm sure you could still buy one, but because the market's deteriorating, they're just not gonna. There's a child of mine screaming upstairs.
The reason we're laughing, there's so much distraction going on today. It's trickle. Hang on. I've got a sound effect. Are you ready? Hang on. Where's it gone? Because it's Halloween today.
Halloween.
So when we arrived here, me and Ben got here, we couldn't even get into your garage part because there was a queue of trick-or-treaters trying to get in the door. And we were like, I guess we'll just wait here. Goddamn kids keep going.
My strategy for 10 years straight is turn all the lights off, take an iPad, go and watch Netflix in bed, and just pretend it isn't happening. I got a message this morning. Lucy's like, amazing. And the door is covered in fluorescent skeletons, two pumpkins lining the porch, and we've gone the other way this year. So what do you expect? You've run out of sweets by 7:30. We'll hear them. They'll be banging on the door well long into the night.
It just made me laugh that seems so distracting. And then your lovely son has got bronchitis upstairs. So every now and again there's people knocking on the door. There's crying and coughing from upstairs.
John came to measure for the shells.
He lives with other architects, we found out.
He's lived with 6 Czech architects. That was weird when he said that. He said, "Oh, I live with an architect." I said, "Oh, great."
I feel like we should question his
He's
story.
like, "I've lived with 6."
Does he live in a student halls?
Well, that's it. It's about money. Maybe it's a bum. Maybe it's a sort of a down and out centre. Like architects who are living off welfare.
It just makes me laugh that. Okay, so to reiterate your point, that we said money last week was our podcast episode topic, and then literally 3 days later, the AJ, the Architectural Journal,
dropped in,
which is for Mimir Div, who does listen to this. That's a magazine about architecture, Dave. It's very is it prestigious? Yeah, sure. Anyway,
well, it's not free.
It's not free. It costs you money.
It costs £10. I've just noticed that.
10.
Yeah.
Are you kidding?
They put it on the coffee table at work, which is why I assume we have a copy.
I stole that off someone's desk. I couldn't find it. Anyway, you just started reading it 5 seconds before. You literally came in, and that is because I put that on your desk. And do you know where I got it from? Your desk. And it was the same place I left it. So the research is, I'm just saying it's one-sided. What
was interesting, because I thought it would be the normal kind of complaining about salaries. And they've got a really inspiring article by a woman called Jo, someone who I'll come back to. But she set up an architecture firm, but she's also set up a finance firm. But she's not a developer, and it's a sort of investment come architecture practice. And I thought that's new and that's different, and it seemed quite a positive read.
We'll come on to that, because that is part of my end strategy, where we come on to the positive.
What, the big game, the winner takes all.
So I have. We're going to add in a bit more like what we like. So basically, you and I are obsessed with the Ellis James and John Robbins podcast. That is so. What episode are you up to now?
I don't think I'm obsessed like you. Well, they automatically play the next episode, and since we decided to do this, I've listened to loads of different ones. The FT do loads. I listen to sort of weird Tech Valley business ones sometimes, and I'm like, how to encourage peer feedback, and you listen to them and you're, God, they're excruciating, kind of gibberish, but then you're like, huh. There is something there, and obviously they're very American. But once you've got over that, there's...
Well, you hit the nail on the head that the reason we both love that podcast is that you can be thinking anything, and after half an hour of listening to the Ellis James and John Roberts podcast, you have forgotten all of your woes and you're in the zone. But the thing I like is that that's quite an optimistic podcast. And you...
Is it?
Are you kidding? No, I love it.
Oh, it's grim. Anyway, but it's not about that.
but that, the AJ magazine, when I read that, I was like overwhelmingly depressed. That's the most depressing magazine I've read in absolutely ages. The opening... I'm not going to make you read it live on air. The opening statement... No, do you know what? I had all these questions. I was so excited. And I wrote all this stuff down. Look, I wrote notes. I wrote loads in it. It's all so depressing.
What's depressing? Oh, look, okay.
Let me just start... let's just set up the podcast. Let's start with the bad stuff.
Okay.
And people listening at the end will tell you how to make millions? Billions,
possibly. Isn't it about? We want to hear what people think about it and what their challenges actually are. There's some horror statistic about our salaries haven't been rising in line with inflation, let alone other key indicators. But what do people think? Does that reflect?
Yeah.
Okay, not about money, but I've been reading this thing that the world is getting kind of better every year. There are fewer murders, there are fewer genocides, general well-being and health is increasing, length of life, public service, but there's an increased kind of dissatisfaction with life because communication between those that have things and have not has never been more frequent. So people see what they're missing out on. And I wonder if, like, money, this sort of rolls into that a little bit. Like, are you, happiness and fulfillment is different from money. And we're talking about money.
Yeah. But it's interesting. There's a really good Elon Musk interview with Joe Rogan. It's amazing. It's like how many CEOs smoke weed and drink whiskey with a podcast interviewee. He does it for 2 hours. But one of his statements is the reason people are more unhappy is because happiness is expectation is reality minus expectation. He's saying we expect so much from life now. Everything is like on Instagram, YouTube. You can find out anything. That nothing's ever as good as you think it's going to be.
Yeah, I think that's right, and that tracks back to personal relationships. You expect your long-time life partner to provide everything, like to make you laugh at dinner, to be the mother of your children, to entertain every ridiculous commercial idea that you have. Whereas before you would, just being sort of entertaining your, I don't know. I think you put a lot of emphasis on other people to perform.
Well, also one of the nice things is that we've emailed out heavily links to our podcast, all our friends and family and colleagues for
thanks for commenting.
Yeah. And we've had loads of people kind of as a perfect litmus test. My dad is normally he's like, it's good, but actually we ended up having quite an adult conversation about our last episode was all about awards and about how money had changed the awards and was that a big thing. And I've actually had so many conversations with people about the content of our podcast, not is it embarrassing that you and I are running a YouTube channel and is that weird, but the money one more than all of the rest, just having conversations with people in the office and directors of structural engineering companies I chatted to yesterday, like it's
is that the same person you referenced at the last podcast?
Yeah, I'm really hoping he listens. I really want him
still trying to win work. It's great that you're using this as a platform.
Me win work. He's the one trying to win work out. But it is a hot topic, and one of the things that I think historically I was talking to someone about is that architecture has been kind of a gentleman industry. It's been a very wealthy, like when
what is the word that often prefaces architect? It's struggling. Or for example, that is always a struggling architect, like struggling artist. The whole cultural reference is set up to a star-architect or struggling architect. You're not, that thing of the friendly family solicitor that works in a medium or small town that looks after your wills and your marriages. An architect used to be like that, a member of the golf club, like a part of civic society, whereas now it's like a struggling architect or some megalomaniac.
Yeah.
Those are the two options, and I know which I am.
Can you be a wannabe megalomaniac?
I don't think so. You're in or out, Ben. Pick a lane.
But I think the history of it is very much historically architect. There's been a very wealthy tradition of people who had money and they had friends who could be architects, and it's always been a kind of, you don't discuss money, you do it for the love of architecture. That's because
well, we've carried that tradition forward, haven't we?
But do you know what's really funny is I wrote all this stuff down, and this is the one out of all the 10 topics that we'd come up with for our 10 episodes. The money one was the one I was like, I'm not even sure what we're going to talk about in this one. And we sat down for ages, and that's just because
who sat down for ages?
We had a good
you and I okay, yeah,
lunch today and lunch last week.
Yeah, a couple of lunches.
Yeah. But it's because I don't think about money. Like, I never got into architecture because I didn't even know there was a lot of money. There isn't. Is it good? Is it bad? I literally got into it because it felt like a hobby that I could also turn into a job.
So money is, of course, what we earn. That's the obvious thing. But how much do buildings cost? How are they priced? How do you buy all the things which is needed to create a building? What's the mechanisms behind how it moves around? I'd be interested to hear what generally people think about it. I know what architects, we feel undervalued, and in a way we've forced to share the profession with loads of other consultants, facade engineers, cost consultants, sustainability consultants, BIM experts, visualizers, things traditionally that would have sat in our demise and meant that we'd earn all that money. We've, for whatever reason, lost that. And so our fee reflects that and our salaries reflect it. So I think getting architects to complain about their salaries will be quite a straightforward task. But I do think people would be interested in how we price the work, because that's a bit of a mystery, I think. I don't know why do we charge on a percentage basis? I think that's mad. If you're having your house done or your extension done, and an architect comes and talks to you and he says, well, I'll take 10% of the construction value, that's pretty mad, isn't it? So every time he specifies a more expensive bath or a glazed element that doesn't need to be, he's taking 10%. And that isn't how it works. And I should say, I want to sort of fight that perception, but I can see as a client that's a conflicting position in terms of the money.
Yeah.
Whereas if you said it's going to cost this much and we can talk about what's best for your project, I'm sure again there's a huge opportunity to disrupt that model.
But it's interesting. What was the name of the woman we both were kind of inspired? Is Jo
Cohen. She
had this quote that was, architects are seen as a component, a critical component, but just a component of a bigger development machine. And it's interesting that someone described architecture as a very mature industry, as in it's had a lot of time to be refined. And I think one of the issues as well is that you can be an architect and run an architecture practice, then you can go onto the developer side, and then basically all the money is held to the developer, and there's an architect inside of that system who knows every way that you make money and every little speciality. And if you're paid to try and make a development more efficient, all the tricks. It's a very kind of, there's no secrets then. It's not like a doctor can suddenly jump on the other side.
I've always thought if you ask 10 architects what they do, you'll get 10 different answers. So at one level, it's like a baker or a carpenter or someone that's very hands-on. They can operate independently. There are some routes that are so technical and you're part of this big machine that if you ask them to set up on their own, it'd be impossible because they need so much support or so much scale. So I think you get such variety. And the other thing is, I don't think you should think of it as this kind of developers want to just destroy the design and the public realm and the civic identity. And once they've gotten inside of there, what chance have we possibly got of getting everything right? Yeah, I think it's much more collaborative and saying, look, we understand the commercial risks, and actually it has huge benefit having design principles inside those organizations who are championing those those kind of ideals, or trying to communicate why that is important in terms of asset management to the money men.
So
but then Lucy did say, having listened to episode 2, that I was far too supportive of the establishment of the status quo. But I do think that's true.
Wow. Okay, fair enough. I wasn't expecting you to say that.
Okay.
Well, see, I think that as an industry, we maybe undermine our own worth by other architects being willing to buy projects. And when I say buy projects, that means that you do it for the absolute cutthroat minimum, because it's a big prestigious project. It'd be great for your practice. So people buy projects by undervaluing themselves. And once that's done a few times, if we talk about construction fees and how much an overall architect will charge for the cost of the construction of the building, and if someone just goes, yeah, I'll do it for 5.5% less, when you're talking big projects, that is an enormous amount of money.
So you're talking, for people who may not know it, when someone wants a building done, they will approach several different architects and you will bid for it. Part of it will be a design often, part of it will be how much it's going to cost, and there are these various aspects around it. And sometimes people put in very low fees. I would say we had quite a porous industry in terms of information. People end up knowing what your fee is on these big buildings just because it takes 2,000 people to deliver a skyscraper. People know. So if you come in as some nameless American firm with a huge undercut, people know that's what you charged for that, and that is what you'll be expected to charge on the next one. So I think it's more complex than, oh God, they can ride this loss because the next one they'll win on. Actually, once you've said that that's your price, it's very difficult to get it up again. But I don't know.
But I think it's a different business model, because if you have you have your Fosters and your Zahas who have a very kind of involved design process. Not that not that everyone does, but they're able to command a higher percentage because you're getting I guess they have a brand that you're buying into. Whereas if you have, and I'm being very delicate here, a more open design, if you're the next tier down and you're trying to do these big developments, if the project's been designed to a certain level, why not just change at a certain point? I like at a certain construction stage.
I think that's okay.
Yeah,
I think it's totally all right to say you give our vision and then you build it, and it's up to then the architect to make themselves competitive to deliver it and illustrate how by delivering it they are gonna carry that concept through to every element, and that user experience is gonna be exponentially greater than selling an icon to the planners and Joe Bloggs comes and delivers it.
What I like about you, Bill, is you have a relentlessly optimistic view on everything. Now, if I hadn't have read that magazine, I would have bought into your view. However, that magazine paints a very different picture of the current architectural industry right now. Okay. And it's a bit of a bummer.
What are having not read it, what's the problem? What's your big complaint with their approach?
Their opening gambit. This is the opening statement on the first page.
Okay.
Salaries remain static for the last decade. Women are paid less.
Static in
the average wage has not gone up that much in the last decade. Is what they're saying.
The average wage has not gone up that much. So what, in terms of the relative average now, or from what the average was then?
You'll have to read the appendix. I don't know.
Okay.
Salaries on average had lowered at the beginning of their careers. So a new part 2 going in, that's actually lowered. And it gets more depressing. Jobs market is buoyant. However, the market doesn't value architects because the jobs market is buoyant. Average wages on average are going up. Architects' wages on average are going down.
So those last 2 points you made are exactly why we're doing this podcast. Exactly. We're losing incredible talent to other industries. I guess we're in the middle of a technological revolution.
Agreed.
Why would you not be part of that? I totally get that. But we're a tech firm. Undoubtedly, we're a tech firm. We we use VR, we use augmented reality. Our output is mainly digital, obviously, until it's at a building, but the products, the comms, how we explain our work. I mean, it's a tech firm, and the kind of people that thrive in our work are those who love all of that stuff. The perception is, I want to go off to a visualizer, I want to go off to graphics, I want to make video content, or I want to make advertising, and it kind of is wrong. But we need to attract people by giving them a comparable pay, I guess.
And I'm with you completely. And I think we're being purposefully slightly more controversial when it comes to money, because we want people. I really do want people to like write in on what their experience is, because, for example, I spoke to a guy who runs OpenDesk, and he's a really nice guy. But they're a tech firm, you know. They do furniture design, but it's a tech startup. But that's how they describe it. And he was basically saying that the guys that do the website and the guys that do the coding get paid exponentially more than everyone else in the office, because that's just where different skill set. And it's the same with our kind of Revit's this new piece of software. It's not even new, but it's becoming industry adopted. They command probably, I guess, more. We have Revit specialists who are leaving or coming and going, and they're able to command higher salaries than architects. They're seen as more valuable than an architect, which is bonkers, but at the same time, it makes perfect sense. So I guess
I wouldn't put too much weight on that, because your accountant will probably earn more than your architect because of that skill set. Good architects can use it and do it. A Revit specialist might who runs a team might get. I don't give too much credence to that. I would say the Open Desk example is a really good one, because he does something really simple. Well, what looks simple, as in he's designed this kind of CNC cut furniture, and he's made the digital information to cut that open source, so anyone can download it and make their own, or you can link with one of their partners who'll make it. And the idea being that you can be in West London or East London or Afghanistan or Sao Paulo, and you'll find a local partner who'll cut it and deliver it to you. So there's no shipping. It's very locally sourced, and it's fantastic. But it's a very simple idea. I have this design, I put it online, anyone can access it, and it connects. But when he talked us through the tech involved to make that happen, it's really complicated, and it's quite a simple idea. So we go to the pub and spin out half a dozen of improbable ideas each time. But to actually implement something that I think is kind of thought was quite lightweight but useful.
Yeah.
Actually, it's not, and he's a great example. And I shouldn't sort of name it. I went round Here East this evening, which is the old press centre in the Olympic Park, which has been turned into an amazing university co-working space. All the furniture's Open Desk,
is it? And also all the pods are WikiHouse,
all the pods are WikiHouse. So what he's done is. It's this incredible advert. You've got all these incredible kind of creative people using his product and buying into this idea of open sourcing. So the kind of medium is the message, if you will.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's not about money.
No, but the reason I brought it up was this issue kind of made me focus on money as in salary. And I think the point that we were trying to make is that the money is not just salaries we're going to talk about. And actually the thing I find interesting is the kind of diversification of the architectural industry. And I think that I'm fascinated to hear about what students are going to. I mean, there's a colleague on my team who tutors, and he's saying that kind of students now, they're much more open to learning things themselves, doing themselves. And I think my personal opinion is that social media, YouTube and learning online is just going to change the industry completely. And actually that's why, you say, a Revit specialist gets much more. I don't really buy that. We've got Stella girl on my team arrived, has never used Revit. In a couple of weeks, it's like crunching through it. So can I just one little aside, you can carry on. I've been trying to learn Revit for 2 years, and I want to shoot myself in the face every time I use it. And you have absolutely no idea how to use Revit.
That's
no, you don't. You're a Revit theorist, just like I was. Believe me, I can do a lecture about how great Revit is. I love it. Cannot use it. I absolutely despise Revit. It's amazing. It's changed our industry. It's great for everything, but I cannot stand that.
There is an argument, and it's like I do think there's some truth.
Go on, let's have a Revit rant. Come on.
No, not a Revit rant, but there's a danger that you make the entry level jobs in architecture not good. It used to be make some models, do some prints, do very practical things. Like model making or binding stuff, or okay, let's just do this one Photoshop drawing that means you have to pixelate some. But it was kind of varied and practical and interesting, and you were thinking about the problem. Now there's a data inputty type thing, and combined with the fact we're going to pay people a bit less, it makes it less attractive. So what do we do to correct that? Is money the answer? Is it a way like anti-Revit time where it's a day a week where you're doing something deliberately just different? I'm aware we should bring it back to money though, because it is the money issue. How much do buildings cost?
I thought you were going to say how much do I get paid then. Come on, let's just get it out in the open.
Okay, one.
There's 6 noughts on there. How much does a building cost? That is a very good question. So a lot of people I've spoken to about this podcast, they're just fascinated in the biggest possible buildings that we do, because the majority of the architectural profession are aware of most people know how much a house costs, an extension, they can kind of guess if it's whatever. People are genuinely have no idea about skyscrapers, and I take it for granted because we do them, that everyone's like, yeah, of course, it's not that interesting, but loads of people are like, what's it like working on skyscrapers?
Well, and actually, I met a cost consultant recently, and he says they want these skyscrapers in Manchester, but they're kind of £300 a square foot, for example, a skyscraper, and you're never going to get the rent that you need to cover that. It's perhaps Manchester you might, but another city you might not. So the only reason it works is in these highly dense places like London and actually a lot of cities that have a tall building, it's not because you're going to get a great return. It's because they need a kind of urban centerpiece or an attractor or a skyline. That's one reason. Money is another one, but they're expensive. I mean,
perfect case in point. There was a really beautiful field in Clegg Bradley, kind of not skyscraper but tall building. I think it was in Leeds, but there's just no way they were going to build it. It doesn't financially stack up. But it was really amazing. And the difference in London is that the land value is a lot, but then the actual cost of a construction of a skyscraper is an enormous amount, but the actual rent they can command because the scale of it is amazing.
So what are we talking? How much was the Gherkin?
Gherkin, the Gherkin was like 180 million, 200 million.
See, that is cheap. Compared to now, a building a bit like that would cost, I would say, close to double that.
Well, do you know what? There's an amazing building called City Point. You're familiar with it? Yep. Mm-hmm. It's been banned. It's been used like a piece of retail. Like in the same way you buy an expensive flat and every 5 years you sell it and you make cash. That skyscraper, I think, was originally built for 160 million, and the site and the skyscraper has just been sold for 750 million or something. And that is in the space of 20 years.
That's property, isn't it? I mean, that's land value and the amenity enhancing around it and the actual building. But if you could buy a site in central London for, say, 100 million, and then you built a 30-story building on it, people want to know how much. Do the people want to know? Maybe they want to know how much would that cost.
The reason my brain is going is because I would love to tell you how much a skyscraper costs, but I feel like
it's a sort of 250
revealing too much of my own job.
Possibly. What are the other money things that people want to know?
A lot of it's just salary. I think that the reason we've chosen money, and I think everyone just keeps coming back to it, is that I'm personally interested in how architects can change the way they do their job to not moan about salary, but just do a different thing that commands a higher response. So that woman, we'll come on to the woman, what was her name?
Jo
Cowan. And she started an architecture practice. And then what she did was she used some of the fees that she did to kind of get equity in a project that she was doing. She would work with young developers who maybe didn't have the asset. So for people who don't know, you obviously buy the site, but then you need to borrow enough money to build the project. And a project might take 3-5 years to make. That's an enormous amount of time to borrow, you know, like a 100,000 square foot office or a retail, an office, hotel or something. It's a long time to borrow money. There's a risk that goes along with that. But I'm reading between the lines, she invested equity in it. So when they sold the project or got it back, not only did she have her fees, but she also had a kind of vested interest in the project. And she used clients that she knew to kind of bring in money as well. So she would use development clients around to try and bring all the money in, and the young developers who had great energy, great ideas, but maybe not enough cash at the beginning. Yeah. And she'd be able to steer the project a bit. And I thought that makes so much sense. Sounds so simple.
It sounds very simple, and it's quite difficult to borrow money for medium scale development. So if you're big and you're going big and it's sort of not quite public money, but it's, you know, you've done it before, you've got very deep pension pockets, people will lend to that. Or if you're very small and it's a house, that people will do. But I think those medium term developments, so that's one solution you're offering. Invest your own fees into it. I guess that's if you're an architect that works for themselves, that architect developer role is one that's always open to you. Maybe just do the things you're really good at. So there are stages of the project where, I nearly called it a problem, stages of the problem that you don't make the money at, or just you don't think you add value, and you could tailor your service to that. I think that's quite a good way. There's take some of the scope back off other areas of the industry. So be a principal designer, be a BIM specialist, do such great in-house visualizations that people want those. And I think that is a big one. You go to these visualization companies and they are fantastic. I mean, Uniform, D-Box, I'm going to name check them. They do great images. But they're several £1,000s and worth it for your killer image. But actually, loads of great images you can get off quite affordable software. So
that is, I mean, that's a really good point. In that, if you're listening to this and you're a student, what we're saying is that you would imagine an architect to do everything, but actually, if a scale of a certain size, once you get up to a certain size, you can't do everything, and an architect will. They'll need to do visualizations, and that's all the glossy pre-built images you see in a magazine. Like, we don't do those in-house because they're so specialist. I mean, they need to look completely real.
I think that is right. It's the photography. You need to go onto site, wait for the weather to be right, photograph the backgrounds correctly, match up the images. Oh, you don't like, the client doesn't like orchids because something happened. We'll do this. There's their artworks there in their own right, and they need the teams behind them. But often creating kind of general ideas or 30 different images of different parts of the building. You could do. So I think kind of getting hold of your scope and increasing that rather than I think of like Richard Grange, the designer, who's a hero of mine. He did the intercity trains, he did a Parker pen, he's done furniture. He's just a designer, a problem solver. And you could be, back in the 60s, a sort of polymath that was interested in, you do graphics, and now we're being forced to kind of specialize more and more, even within architecture, whether you do healthcare or office buildings, and I think we should all collectively push against that a bit and say, no, I'm designing a pen and a computer and a whatever, a website or a podcast, and just, don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean, I would guess our unique selling point at our practice is you get planning. I mean, that is our unique selling point. I think that we get incredibly
one of many things. I think, but
I think there's understanding your worth is one of the things that came up in that. Do architects understand their worth? And the point was, when people say that, is you can't just say you design beautiful buildings. You need to know what you're worth, what you do really well. And I remember something we did a while ago is we sent these comment cards to clients. Like, what's good, what's not. This was an older practice, and they sent like all these cards, hundreds of cards to the clients, and they got all these comments back like a traffic light system. But the feedback they got was amazing, because some of the stuff they generally didn't do that well, and some of the stuff they did brilliantly, and they just hammered away at the stuff they did really well. And that was actually quite successful. I mean, we talked about this with the awards, like how do you go about winning an award? And it's like talk to the judges. It's
so you're suggesting you've made an automatic assumption that you get that feedback. What you should do to respond to that feedback is just do the things you do really well, not
still address the things you don't do that
or is it? I mean, who knows? That's a business case, isn't it? Do you lift up with the way you're underperforming? Who knows?
Because presumably, like all practices, they focus on different sectors. So if you're a small practice and you want to make more money, then there's different sectors that you can try and get more business in. I mean, there's just really obvious business ones, but I think that you've always got a much more businessy way of looking at things, and mine's more like I'm fascinated in how. No,
I'm a creative. Don't say business.
No, but you have a good business head, is what I'm saying.
Okay.
But I am, and me and Ben have been speaking about this a lot. Is just fascinated by the YouTube culture, and I keep bringing this back. But I just think that if you're an 18-year-old, I mean, we're both in our 30s. Sure. Who knows what's going to happen in like 18 years when you get into architecture industry? And just as an example, Unit 9, they're a visualization. They do VR. Their most highly paid VR specialist just taught himself on YouTube. He never went to uni. He just went in, smashed the interview, and said, "I'm just amazing at this." And I'm not saying you can learn architecture like that, but there's a certain element, a lot of these skill-based things that you can kind of go.
You definitely cannot learn architecture like that.
No, I'm not saying you can, but there's specialist skills.
I think there's a sort of. I know what you mean. I know what you mean. This thing that you can upskill yourself, and there are so many ways to express yourself, and that's all these tools are: is ways to express an idea. So nurture your 3D Max and your Revit and your hand drawing skills because they're ways of expressing it. But you need to feed the basic engine of what is an idea and what are your influences and what do you think and how are you going to improve it and all of those kind of key things. So yes, you can upskill, but I think the illusion of social media and modern life is quick wins. You just have this thing and suddenly it blows up and it's great and life's easy. Nothing's like that. It's not like that for real people. It's not like that in property. It's kind of a glacial. Yeah. Well, not glacial. It's you're building, blocks of knowledge, and each time you've done something, you've learned from it. And so actually, people don't want high risk. They want reassurance that what you've learned on that is going to apply to this. And I don't think there are shortcuts to that, but there are certainly shortcuts to kind of expressing yourself well.
Yeah. Interesting.
You don't agree with that?
No.
Well, who's an example of... Okay, you're thinking of someone like Bjarke Ingels, who...
Love that man.
Yeah. I mean, anyone that has a website, big.dk.
Yeah. We were saying earlier, you don't talk about politics with friends because you'll always have an argument. But
is that true? I think you talk about politics with friends.
You're going to argue about everything I say in this podcast. You just back down there.
All right.
My point is, I just think if you don't be like Bjarke Ingels, I'm going to disagree with you on a lot of other things.
I love Bjarke. Not
you. I'm just saying there's people who don't like the Coal Yard by Heatherwicks, and I also I don't like them, and they're good friends.
You don't like the Coal Yards, or you don't like people that disagree?
I absolutely love the Coal Yard building.
Yeah,
and
also featured.
It also featured in the AJ this week. It's absolutely amazing. It's a Heatherwick building. It's like a grade 2 listed. I don't know what it is.
I bet it isn't grade 2 listed.
It's listed. It's listed. It says in there.
All right.
And I love it.
Okay. So for those that don't know, it's part of the King's Cross development. Loads has been done around Granary Square. Argent developed it. Stanton Williams did at the university and Central St Martin's, and loads of great buildings around there. Lots of different architects have worked on that site. Not us. And they have these things called the coal drops, which were adjacent to the canal that were as yet undeveloped. And Thomas Heatherwick's studio have basically, they're two parallel barns, and he's taken the central roofs that seem to kind of swerve off the roof, kiss, and then go back. And it's very unconventional and arresting, and the traditionalists might not like it, but it's brilliant, and it's fun, and that place is rocketing. King's Cross has gone from sort of a down and out hangout to it's like a day trip and a fantastic place. I mean, it's brilliant what they've done there. I think it's the right fit. Yeah, I love that.
So when I came down to London like 7 years ago,
I'm going tomorrow. I'm excited.
I'm so jealous.
Yeah.
We cycled through King's Cross. It was the type of place you didn't want your bike to get a puncture because it was just terrifying. It was like the middle of nowhere, and now it's absolutely amazing.
I used to go to Bagley's down by the canal.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was there were 3 nightclubs right next to each other.
Is Bagley one of your adult clubs? No.
No, it's not. Not one of them. They're anonymous. But
what I like is that I want to celebrate these like amazingly ambitious ideas, and I just, having been in meetings where you discuss these ideas, and you have to be so strong in your storytelling to keep that momentum up for years, that I feel buildings like that need to be celebrated because they're just amazing.
Does it relate to money? How much do you think that costs?
A lot. But what's interesting is I'm fascinated that in terms of money and fees, I mean, how he must command a higher fee, right? You know, they're amazing buildings, and
this sounds like terrible name dropping.
Okay.
But I met Thomas Heatherwick in China, and I was working there, and he was visiting as a part of a tour with UK, the then UK TI. That's now.
You said UKIP then?
No, UK TI. And I said, and we were sitting there, and it's one of those things. There's a bit of sitting around, and there's a few English architects they've huddled in the corner. I said, how, I can't get them to pay. Thomas, it's so frustrating. We do this great work, and he says, "How do you think it is for me?" He says, no. I said I should correct it. I said, "God, they want a sign of everything. They want in on absolutely every decision, and then how do I get them to pay?" And he says, "How do you think it is for me? I get no client engagement. They're just like, we've got the great Thomas Heatherwick on board. There's the money. Leave him to his own devices. So at least they're on you." Commenting on your design, and between you then get to a solution. He's like, they feel they've bought this brilliance and they're expecting it. And no one calls you until D-Day, and you then have like this kind of make or break showdown where you reveal whatever your thinking is. I mean, that is pressure. I totally. He flipped it around for me from being incredibly jealous of him to giving a kind of insight into I can see the pressure that sits behind a successful brand.
Yeah, I mean they are one of the best, or one of the ones I think are most inspiring.
I guess if you don't know Thomas Heatherwick, he's a brilliant architect designer, but he didn't come from the traditional background, so he often plays with kind of scale. So I remember his mother's a jeweler, and he's got that kind of craft feel, and he often massively changes the scale. He treats buildings a bit like products, and some traditionalists who are wrong think that lacks integrity.
Yeah, but stick it to the traditionalist.
But equally, no, but he I don't know. He's selling something or making a really clear point, or making it accessible to a different type of person, and it's inspiring
for the non-architects. The building that I saw, something that would encapsulate what he does. He did design the cauldron in the Olympics in the 2012 opening ceremony in London, and then also we've got a guy at work who worked with Thomas Heatherwick and also Danny Boyle, and they did all the visualizations for all of the introduction for the Olympic ceremony, opening ceremony. So that kind of shows that's why I find him so excited, because he has diversified so much. He can do visualizations, he can do jewelry, and he does these amazing things. And he's done this amazing hexagonal bridge that looks like a scorpion's tail that's opened up in London. Just amazing. But from a money point of view, I don't know if you're a small practice how you can, or not a small practice, like how do you get into like furniture design or bridge building? I mean, you've got to kind of have a pretty. He started small, and I think it's ingenuity. It's not so much money, but you mentioned the bridge. This idea of a bridge is when a bridge is open, it can look kind of snapped like a broken leg, and he did this kind of rolling series of hexagons so that when it was open,
it was this complete ball. So in both states, it felt kind of complete. And that's a simple product style idea. So I think ingenuity, and I don't think that's about money. I think that like the money comes. I think people are probably interested now in like how the money goes to scale a practice like that. I think when we were first graduating, there was a famous architecture firm called Foreign Office Architects who still exist, I think, but probably not quite as high profile as they were back in the day. And you would send your CV to slave@foreignofficearchitects.com. Wow. That was the website. And that culture of doing things for free has coloured our profession disproportionately to others. Firstly, it says only do it if you've got independent means. So that gets a certain sort of type of person involved. And also it's about, we don't really respect you because we think you know nothing. You can add no value because you're so lowly. And if you'd work there for nothing, that's the equivalent of entering a competition or undercutting your architectural peer group, because it's sort of a lack of respect, isn't it? There's been a kind of culture against that now because of zero-hour contracts and things. But there's a time thing that sits with money, is that we'll pay you a reasonable rate, but we'll expect you to do 60 hours a day.
That's what I was going to say, is that we've had friends and colleagues who've worked at like Heatherwicks or OMA, or have worked at Zaha's, and whilst they may not reduce their fee, you still pay a commanding fee. The hours that they work, I mean, right in if you're at any of those practices, maybe not in a bad way, but I mean, some of these people, like one of my friends at uni went to work for OMA in Rotterdam, I think Rotterdam, and he literally arrived there and then slept in a sleeping bag under his desk for the first 5 days. And then
is that true? Because I had a very different experience. My friend worked at UN Studio in Amsterdam, and he said at 5 o'clock everyone left, and the Dutch had a really
maybe it's changed then. I know that
that was me disagreeing again.
I know. I've done a tally, and it's wildly in my favour.
Anything you say, I'll agree with. Now you'll be like the cabbie who's a bit racist that I have to agree with just because I want to get home.
Yes. And a lot. I would say if you were taking an average, typically the more prestigious the practice, the more intense the workload is. And I know that because I think that if you're doing like a Thomas Heatherwick project, for example, they're quite jewel-like and they have a real beautiful product quality to them. The optioneering they do that you don't see. I mean, if you're just looking at the magazines, you're only going to see that polished product at the end. But the amount of different options that they do is absolutely mind-boggling. And you know, they work so long because everyone's so passionate about it. So whilst they, as a company, they might get paid a lot of money, if you work that out per hour. And I guess that's the same in graphics or anything. The more passionate you are.
But there's an efficiency. Do you think there's an inefficiency, as in architects where, what about this? What about this? And we look at a lot of different options because we're passionate about it, and the final product will have our name all over it. Actually, there are quite a kind of efficient financial practices out there. There are loads of them.
Yeah.
What they often do is, that's the scheme. You know, that's the concept. That's the scheme. That's what you've paid for. That's the time. Bang.
Yeah.
And it's good. Is it great? Sometimes, but not guaranteed. And I think the we're victims of our own passion in that we could do better. We've given them that, but I could do better. And then no one's paying for that.
Yeah.
But we still charge, the hours still going, so the profits go down. And I think it's having the experience to do something that's quite good first time.
Yeah.
And then the integrity to say, I'm afraid that's what you paid for.
Well, you can see it in uni, even from the first days of uni. Like when I was in my part 2, there was this amazing girl who was like, I'm going to get in at 9, I'm going to work flat out till 5, and I'm not going to do any work in the evening. And she still got a distinction. She was absolutely amazing.
What's she doing now?
She's an architect. She's doing really well. She's just super organised, yeah. But she had a plan. She was like, that's my plan. Whereas I remember just getting so excited at endless options.
You didn't
and
have
ideas.
a plan at university.
I got told by my
tutor.
If
you did, it wasn't to do with architecture.
My tutor said to me, I still remember to this day, there's about 10 ideas in this project. Any one of them could be a dissertation project. You've just got too many in one project and they're all too loud for each other. And I was like, but I do think that's one of the things about architecture is that I think you have to police yourself. If you're going to do a project like a skyscraper, going to be seen by so many people. I don't care who you are. You're going to lose sleep over that project because you're like, it's got to be right. It's got to be right. And right is when you feel comfortable with the project.
Yeah, I guess that. And I mean, it's not directly about...
Right, I'm on...
No, I guess.
Are you agreeing with me or disagreeing?
I agree with you. I agree with you. But... Yeah. It focuses the brain, doesn't it? Like having a child or having a family, and you can't just think about stuff all the time. Are you a worse architect because you come home and you do Halloween stuff and you've got a child with bronchiolitis? Yeah. Actually, you've got to make it work while you're in the office, and you can't dread the meeting. You just got to kind of go in and deliver it. And I think that sort of separation, a change is as good as a rest kind of thing. I think that's quite healthy, and that's something everyone struggles with as a student. It's this like nagging dread that you could still be working on a project when you're trying to have a roast chicken or play Call of Duty.
Yeah. So I think is
that the same? Is that the same in graphics?
It's definitely a rat race as well. Yeah, it's super competitive. I mean, architecture and graphic design have a lot of overlap in that respect. Yeah.
If you went to work for a big graphic agency, do you think at 8 p.m. there'd be what percentage of the office?
I mean, the company that we work for is super lenient in that regard. Like I've done, this is my first job. So before this, I was doing a couple of internships, and I mean, I'm being paid like peanuts for that, and they expect me to on a lot of days I was the last one there. So yeah.
And what time would most people leave that graphic company?
I mean, we're doing 9 to 5, but most people leave 8ish, 9ish. And that's regularly.
And how does the money work? Are you expected to work for very little because you can then say I was affiliated with this?
On some level, especially probably architecture students can relate to this as well. Like the same with graphic design students, coming out of university, you're looking to go into a top architecture or graphic design practice, and because you're going to get better work as a result of it, or you'll move on and do better things with your life. But I agree with I can't remember who made the point about being passionate about it as well. We suffer as a result of it. That was you, Bill. And that's totally right. I think within both of our industries, I'm on top of my work, and I don't want to see a project fail as a result of me only doing 9 till 5. So yeah, I suffer instead. I'm not saying I suffer, but I stay on.
And you and I think are taking advantage of Ben's passion for this. I
found myself here.
Yeah, exactly.
We're just a great gang, guys.
We're making history.
So are we a sort of self-indulgent, sort of drippy lot? If it's the same true of graphics, that's got to be true of advertising, telly, and all the other cushy media jobs. But that's the creative industries. That must ring true with people that work in fashion, I bet. Or
I think the higher the entry requirements to get into an industry. So I think for architecture, it's 4, 5, 6 years. You've got to be pretty passionate about your job to go through all of that to get to the end. And I think you can't help but apply that passion, and you just can't be efficient. I don't think you can just sit down and have a great idea in an hour. It might come later in the evening. It might come the next day. And actually you'll do 5 really ideas that you're super passionate of. And then the client will go, oh yeah, just another 5. And you're like, oh no, last week was a really good week. I don't really want to do another 5 back to back again. They're like, but you did it in 1 week, so we can have another 5 in a week. And you're like,
yeah, because that, you've spoken. Yeah, I get that, and it sort of reminds me of another thing where the first project you and I ever worked together on, there were 14 and 15 of us. That same project, and I kind of hinted at it last time, would be done by half as many people now. Yeah. But we're not making a lot more money. Why is that? Because the client expects more now.
Yeah.
For the same kind of money. Is that what's happening? Yeah. So are we as a group, we're destroying each other, or
it does,
or is tech is tech subjecting us, or is it? I don't know.
I don't know how you feel, but when we were on that project, we were just playing with the idea of 3D modeling. I mean, we had renders, we had a 3D model, but actually the majority of our drawings, let me finish. It was all 2D, whereas now in meetings, we just have the Revit model open. We literally look around a real building basically. And I think the understanding of the client is like, well, that's what it looks like. I don't like that. They don't need to have this understanding of this really beautiful 2D drawing. Like they want to know, well, there's an elevation, there's a section. I don't really get it, but you show them literally a black and white version of exactly what it's going to be built like. And they can just like spin it around and go, I don't like that bit, I don't like that bit. You almost have to police how much they can see. So whilst we are ruthlessly more efficient, I mean, Revit, as much as I haven't engaged with it properly mentally, it's changed how we do work. I mean, and I think the client expects more. And I don't know about the clients you work with. The clients that I'm working with at the moment, they work with 5 or 6 other architects, all at the same, all very, very good architects. They know exactly what everyone does, so they know, do you know that practice is doing this and this practice is doing that, and then it's exciting. You want to be the best practice, you want to be doing the best work, and you see what other people are on, you're like, we need to be better than that. And I think always being at the forefront of like, how can you push technology further? If someone can sit down and do a model in Revit in a day, how can we make ours look more amazing, better? How can we push the technology? So I've always felt we've been right at the edge of like, oh, the Revit model's not working, or that parametric thing's not working. We're always pushing it. Like, well, if I can do that, what's the best you can do it in?
That's a good point. It also means we've in some senses lost control of the narrative, because we're not curating I mean, you do curate the views for the presentations and the design and access statement, but you're right. If everyone can see everything straight away, you leave yourself pretty open. It's funny that our clients know way more about what our peer group are producing than perhaps we do. Yeah. It's great to read design and access statements from Planning Portal because they're so different, but it's good to see what competitors do. But that's interesting. I'd love to go and sit in one of the practices we've identified as like commercial rivals and see how it.
Well, you know what we were saying, we're a technology company, and I think one of the ways that, I think from a money point of view, I do think now you almost need software engineers at architecture practice. And I only say that because I know that Foster's have a research department for their Revit team. They have plugins to make things so efficient. I mean, do you remember when we had to change one section on our project?
Well, you've done well.
I was doing so well.
It's brilliant.
And fantastic project. And never let that out of the bag. And as if you
safe bare hands, Stuart.
If you know what I'm about to say, you'll know how frustrating this was. They decided to lower the building by 200 mil, just a little bit on the bottom floor. But what that meant to us as a team is we had to go in every single drawing. Every single level has a level on every drawing. It says a spot height of what that level is, and everything's not attached. So you had to go in every drawing, change the drawing number, change the level, go in the next section, and it must have been 400 drawings. It took us like 2 weeks. In Revit, we did that last week and just lowered the whole building by a meter in about 5 seconds. You just go boop, and there's a stair builder. You just go stair, core, boom, done, and it does it all automatically. And it's so fast how you can do simple stuff. I mean, you want to do a shopping mall or a warehouse in Revit, you smash one of those out. One person in a day, no problem. Absolutely no problem. And I just think that, I mean, how can you compete with that? Like, how can a client see that done that quickly? And then you say, oh no, I've got this really cool facade detail. It's going to take me a week. And they're like, no, can't you do that in a day? Isn't there a button for doing that? And we're so fast to show it off as well. We're like, look how quick we can do it. So I think Revit is an amazing tool to speed up efficiency. Even though I did massively badmouth it at the beginning of this podcast.
Well, yeah. Well, I'm trying not to disagree with you anymore.
Yeah,
but I think you're selling yours.
Here we go. I like trying to work out how you're going to disagree with me in not.
I think you're
saying I
selling
disagree.
yourself very short by saying knock one of those up in a day.
No, I'm saying something very, very simple.
Okay.
Something that we would never do. I'm not saying a skyscraper you knocked up in a day. I'm saying that you can do a very simple warehouse. I'm saying that there's things you can do in Revit very quickly.
Yeah.
Not the buildings we do, obviously. They're amazing.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, I think as a software tool.
And because of that, you think that reduces the amount of money we can charge because people see the tools that are available rather than they see how well you can wield this.
Yeah. Well, we have clients come in who just go and look at our team. You can't say, oh, I've got the money for 10 people. And they're like, there's the team. Like, it's 4 people. They're only ever 4 people. I'm not going to give you money. They knew what it was for 10. So they want to pay you for 4. I think that's I don't know. I don't know how you can charge more money for less people. That makes sense.
Well, you just say our rate is going up because of this expertise which they're embedded with, and you're right that Revit has taken you a couple of years. Well, that's capital knowledge, and that value should be footed by the client. I mean, I'm slightly sort of.
I know you're very. I know you're not arguing, but yeah, I'm just going to put in the tally chart. But one of the things about how to make more money was raise your fees. That was it just said, not in this magazine, but one of the websites is like a well-known website was like, just raise your fees, and it's not. You need to understand your worth. Could you? Project to project, client to client.
I'm English, and so I don't like talking about money. I give huge tips just to save kind of the awkwardness of any misunderstanding. And I think that's a pretty British and universal trait, not liking to talk about money. Even in most circumstances, I'll avoid it. Talking about a raise, talking about fees, unsettled in. But actually, it's much more difficult to ask your client to ask your employer or boss for money than it is to say to a client, you haven't settled your debts, or we'd agreed this, because that's just business. That's sort of what people expect. So there's that sort of internal, external thing.
Well, one of the things we do, because this is the money issue, not just how much architects charge for fees and salary, but salaries and technology. One of the things is, as an architect, how can you yourself, so irrelevant of how much the company charges, how can you yourself get more money from your company, internally charge more money? And we had a conversation about like, how do you ask for a raise? Like, how do you upskill yourself? How can you just say, oh, I'm going to become the BREEAM guy or whatever, like go on a course, upskill yourself. Yeah.
Well, you said, you learn it online, didn't you? Apparently. Just learn it online. But I think that thing of self-skilling, doing it in the evening, we have a Revit expert and we've got a couple of them, and he's learned it all online. And I think that's a brilliant way of doing it. And then say, now this is my role. I think that thing of people believe what you tell them, and you say, I'm the Tall Buildings guy, or I'm the Revit guy, or I'm the guy for Lumion, or I'm the guy that's. People they can't be bothered to sort of scrutinize it or fact check it. They'll just sort of generally accept it and then come to you the next time it crops up. And if you can then help them, that's it. You'll never be scrutinized again. I mean, yeah.
So we're just saying either raise your fees or ask for a pay rise. Those are your two internal ways to make more money.
Like upskill, but often, I mean, I'm terrible at asking for pay rises, but yeah, I guess you can do that. Okay.
How do you? I still find I love that we're all like, how do you ask for pay rise? How does that even work? How do I ask for pay rise?
Well, do you know what? I've been asked for pay rises in a couple of different ways, and sometimes it's just when it comes across as like entitled, or I've been doing this, or when it's compared to someone else, they're just such negative drivers.
Oh, what you're saying, if you come at it from a negative angle, you're like,
and I think it's probably a bit indiscreet to say, but I think sometimes people are put up to it by their partners who have no idea how good they are at work. So he or she will say, well, you're much better than that, and you were working so late on this thing, and do you remember, well, you've been doing that for 2 years, you're worth way more. And then this kind of nervous other partner will come and say, and you're like, come on, we both know where you sit. And so I think having a good sense of what your own worth in these places is one. The other way, I think, with positivity and good humour and a bit of self-depreciation and some realistic sort of benchmarking of what your life costs and where you'd like to be, and some sense of committing yourself there to the future, and coming up with ideas and enhancements. I think it should be rolled into what can we all do to get more money.
So I'm going to use a fake name here. I could be like, "Hi, Gary. I've got a Porsche. My finances are through the roof. Can I have a raise?" Is that how I do it?
That
was self-deprecating. That was amusing.
Yeah.
And
was it self-deprecating?
Well,
Gary.
Yeah. Basically, I had a builder called Gary on my house, and now whenever I make up a story that's negative, I use the name Gary. No, he just didn't pay me. I didn't know. I paid him, and then he didn't finish the work, and I got really angry.
What, completely didn't come back to finish the work?
There's a little tip for you. Never, ever pay a builder until they completely finish the work. Yep.
Interesting. Is that something you subscribe to? You didn't do the 50%? 50%.
Do you know what it was? I did it. We did 5 different sets of work over 6 months, and the last one was the biggest one. And he'd done such a good job. I gave him the money up front because he gave me some rubbish story, and then he did it, and then never finished the last week of work. And it ended up 3 months later, he came back and did it, and I had to ring him like every other day. It was so annoying, and that is why you never ever pay a builder until he's done.
Oh, God, good to see your real colours.
So you're shelf guy. I would,
John.
Yeah, John, if you're listening, you're not getting any cash until those shelves are up, and this looks amazing.
He is listening. He wrote it in his phone. He said, "Oh, great." I was like, "This is episode 3." And he paused halfway through writing it.
He's like, 3? So how many YouTube hits you got? A couple.
Text in, call next week, John. John, right. If you are listening, please do the shelves. I'm excited.
And Bjark, if you're listening, please come on the show. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, 100%. Ollie Wainwright, if you're listening, please come on the show as well.
Yeah, that was a comment. One of the many messages we received from our last broadcast was there are some people that don't know who Ollie Wainwright is and why we were kind of poking fun at him. Ollie Wainwright is
a beautiful, beautiful man.
He's the architecture critic for The Guardian, and he, I'm sure, is a nice guy as well as being very beautiful. Yeah. But critics write things about buildings and say,
And I should say again, one of the things my wife said to me first day going out, I wish you had a sarcastic sign and a truth sign, because she never knows when I'm being super sarcastic. The reason we said Ollie Wainwright was very, very beautiful is because he was voted the most attractive man on Tinder by some sort of thing, I don't know, but and he was very good about it, and he just wrote about it on The Guardian, and that was he didn't want to make a thing of it. He just wanted to know.
Not a big thing.
He had a cat and most attractive man.
And rather annoyingly, he came to our practice, and most of the women in our practice were fawning on him, and then he wrote a really horrid piece about us, and it didn't even impact what they thought of him, which I thought was a lesson for us all.
Because you were there going, "Hello, like hello. I'm just here."
Ollie.
Ollie. Dan. Okay, so this brings us on to not our random game from you. Is your friend commented on episode 2 about higher or lower? Because I don't know. I did reference him in the last episode as an apology for why higher or lower isn't random. Mm-hmm. This is quite a nice segue into it's not random. It's only weird the first time. That's what she said. Okay, Bill, hang on, let me just quickly check. Excellent.
Correct.
And more likely...
Yeah. What's this? This is higher or lower?
We're now playing higher or lower. Okay. Yeah, because this is an important week this week. This is all about money, about wages. I didn't want to be an idiot. Are you checking your phone?
No,
You're just going to Google as you ask your question.
Oh, that's not allowed.
You just wanted the people on the camera to see your beautiful pink cover,
No.
Is your life partner emailing you going, "Our son is very ill upstairs"? That's the type of intimate listening experience you're getting at Architecture 10. Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
You're not going to Google anything?
No Googling.
Okay, right. I'm going to start with a serious one. You ready?
Yeah.
The average salary increase of an architect from 2016 to 2017 was
The
And as
average
a-
salary increase of all architects.
Yeah, this isn't a boring question. This is a really exciting question. So,
But from 2016 to
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
2%.
Yeah, I'll give you that one. 2.5%. But I'll round it up. Okay, now it gets a lot more interesting now. Average salary increase from 2017 to 2018. So 2.5% last year. What was the average salary increase? No, 2016. What was it last year? 2.5%.
0.8.
0.6. Well done. Okay, this is another serious question. Take this seriously. Okay, as a percentage, what was the amount of body weight you thought you'd lost, but you stood on the scales wrong because of a notch on your floor, and you came and swaggered over and told me how much weight you'd lost and how you can look like James Bond, and you were wrong.
0.1%?
It's 2.6% of your overall body weight. I've never known a man put on virtual weight so quickly.
A tragedy. Who gets unreliable digital scale? You get different results depending on which corner you stood on.
I've never seen you look so happy and then so sad the following day.
Small changes, man. Small changes.
He says I'm going to be almost too ripped, is what the gym instructor says. I need to slow down. Okay, so the last one was 2.6. 2.6 is the number we're going for. For this quiz, how many questions did I write before I ran out of time? Higher or lower than 2?
Higher.
Excellent. I wrote 4. I've used that as a bit of filler. Okay, the last one's a serious one. This year, you and I did a half Ironman in Mallorca. How many minutes as a percentage was I ahead of you? So as a percentage, how much faster was I than you?
Oh,
as a win,
I would say
guess
8%.
Oh, it's actually 10%. So
not bad.
So I think that is the type of serious higher or lower than you can expect from this quiz.
There wasn't a money theme in all of them, like the weight and the time and.
No, well, the first 2 are about money, and the next one's me ripping the piss out of you. I thought that was. Lucy said balance. That I need to be. I need to be a little more comical with you because someone needs to put you in your place. Han, how many times did you disagree with me? 1, 2, 3, 4. About 8 times during this podcast, I've counted. Yeah, but different ways.
I've let you get away with murder. I could do a warehouse in a day.
Yeah, hang on. I've seen you do things in Workstation very quickly. Yeah. Little projects. Let's not open this Pandora's box of what can and can't be achieved in a day. Okay, so
anyway,
we are about to wrap this up. We're again rounding up, and I like to end with a bit of positive, useful information. So I've written a few tips, some of which we've gone over. How can we make more money as a profession and as an architect? So here we go. If you're an architect with 10 years of experience, this is what it says in the AJ, work for a developer. On average, it says in there.
That is not what the Architects Journal is suggesting
It says on average you'll earn 30% more as an architect in a developer than outside a developer. And if that's not the type of positive attitude you want for this podcast, but that is a silly one. I just threw that in. It's silly. Okay, the next one is the woman we really like, called, and she set up her own investment company as part of an architecture practice. How feasible do you actually think that is?
I think rather than try to copy her exact example,
but
the principle of divesting yourself and been doing a salaried architecture job while having a hobby business or a property plan on the side is a really good one.
No, but she invested in the project she was working on.
The only thing with that is if you can afford to do it and you're not, it's really expensive, isn't it? Starting a business, it's all hands on deck. You're already living off a shoestring. You've got your business rates, possibly salaries for other people. If you can afford to forfeit for any fee, definitely. But it doesn't strike me as a plausible in a lot of cases. But
why isn't that more common? Why don't architects have more of a vested interest in the actual project they're doing? Because remember in is it the Beetham? What's the really tall building in Manchester? It's I can't remember the name of it now, but he basically owns the penthouse or owns a flat in it as part of building the tower. Mm-hmm. Why isn't that more Why don't architects get more involved with developers?
I guess it's kind of cash flow, isn't it? That you're not getting the fee that are paying to keep the lights on and the power and the software and the salaries. And architecture is a people game. You're only as valuable as the people you have. We're a service industry, and the big cost is people, and you've got to pay people's salaries. So that's why you can't.
Oh, I see.
Forfeit the salary, forfeit the fees for equity in the project.
So you have to make a significant amount of profit to be able to pay off all your staff, have enough money to survive, and then put the rest in.
Absolutely.
But I still don't understand why that isn't why that isn't written into our spec then. As part of this development, Mr. Developer, I know you're putting in money. And we were talking about a project that we worked on that was...
Also, the other big reason is people work hard to create these opportunities from a development and investment potential. They give away equity or opportunity as scarcely as they can. Really, you bring in investors only when you have to and you can't afford it. The idea that you'd give away equity just to pay some consultant fees is...
I think so. Not quite as blunt as that, but the way she did it was she went to small scale developers who maybe couldn't get the cash together. So she went and met very, very young but enthusiastic, and she would gauge herself which developers could be worked with. And her point was that you're essentially generating work together. It's not that the developers come to you and you're like, it's in my space, it's in my field.
I think that is a really good point, and that's something that kind of we do a bit. Is we have relationships with people that own properties or land, and you have relationships with hotel operators or people that want to run service offices or want to do certain things, and you kind of meet and introduce these to people who don't realize that maybe there's a synergy there, and you create a piece of architecture that works well for both of them, or create a leasing model or a physical space. So making those introductions, I think that's a great idea.
But I guess I haven't really read around it. I mean, I don't know if there's more practice to do that business model, but I'd be fascinated. We've already it sounds stupid, but understanding what your unique selling point is, or what you're worth as an architecture practice, because I know that the practice we work at, we're very aware of what we do. But I know friends who've started their own architecture practice and they're doing quite well. And it's you're so close to all the projects. To suddenly step back and have a look at that wider thing, like what do you do really well? Like how can you champion that? And I don't know. I mean, maybe not in London where the businesses are kind of quite so cutthroat, but if you're a smaller practice, that must be, what is your unique selling point? Yeah,
and that again, that challenge of stepping away from firefighting, it's a luxury to say, what's our identity? What's our business really about? You're just taking what you can get and delivering it. And often the clients at those early stages are the most scrutinous and unforgiving, because they've got a lot of vested and they know you're not that, you don't have that back catalogue. So they're having a bit of experience and loads of experience in and around us is a bit of a cushion, I think, for those developers.
And so there was a really interesting article of Bjarke Ingels about Bjarke Ingels yesterday, and he had a quote that was I don't know why this picked up so much press, but no matter how wonderful a building, if there's no client, it doesn't get built. And that was like, yeah, obviously. But loads of people picked up on it as if insinuating that only a client's money could create architecture. And it brought up a bigger conversation about research and does architecture need to be built to be true architecture, or is it master planning, or is there research? And again, that might be another avenue, is that, like a lot of people are quite research minded, and maybe you don't need to build something. Maybe there's a different way to sell
I think that's you've brought it to a very kind of neat end, because the ultimate constraint, architecture is about dealing with constraints, whether those are planning, whether those are kind of operations. The big constraint is money. What does the client own, and what do they want to build, and how much can they pay for it? So that is the big driver. And actually, of course there is scope for research, and that has huge value, and academia and what ifs, but actually working within the constraint of money is a hugely positive driver as well. It doesn't, now it's about resource and making that money and making that that physical material go further. And that constraint is taken much more seriously now than it ever has been. So yeah, I think money as a constraint is a big part of it. I'm with Björk.
Yeah, love that guy. And then I'm gonna end that. I think every architect should start a YouTube channel. That's my new principle. This is a running theme, but I am adamant, and I know you didn't quite agree with me, which is shocking. But I do think that the 18, the 20-year-olds, they're going to have all this information at their disposal, and I think that how do you get an architecture practice off the ground? I think I'm coming at this from a new architecture student who's going to run their own practice. And you look at Assemble, and they had these beautiful small projects, and they wanted to guide people to it. How do you do that? They didn't have social media back then. So that, I also think that there's going to be something amazing on YouTube, and I'm going to be really gutted that I wasn't part of it. Other than this channel, which is obviously amazing. We are a channel. A channel? Can you call it a channel?
We have a YouTube channel.
We have a YouTube channel. Yeah.
If you listen to the channel.
If you're listening to this on
Channel AD.
Channel AD, yeah. So you could be listening to this on Spotify, or Acast for your Android users, or podcast for your iTunes.
And we haven't really asked people to get in touch as much, I've noticed this episode. But
because you've been arguing with me the whole bloody episode.
That's good. That's all right.
Yeah, it's a sparky debate, and then people are like, Bill's not right. That's what I really hope. If we could have a vote.
I probably won't agree with me when I listen to it back.
Like, who is this cross-section of people voting? So you can get in touch with us at Bill or Ben at Architecture Den.
Yeah, not Bill at Architecture Den. It's Bill, ORBEN, at architectureden.com.
Yeah, or Twitter. We're very vocal on Twitter.
We are.
Yeah, to our gushing fans. And we're on Instagram at architecture.den, which Ben is getting some really, really good responses.
The graphics may be better than the content.
Yeah, I think so, yeah. We're like a really good Instagram feed with a mediocre podcast attached to it.
Not true.
Okay, so I'm going to put you on the spot. What's our episode next week about? Technology. Called it.
Okay.
The
big one. Yeah, I love it.
Desperate to talk about
drone
technology.
decks.
Yeah, just drones. And that's
flying
the end.
cars.
Yeah, okay. Great. Thank you very much. See you next week.
See you next week.
Right, cheers.